everyone, and welcome back to another live stream. Cliff Ravenscraft here, and today I wanted to bring to you a topic that I hope will help those of you who are thinking about starting your own online business, those of you who have been dabbling with online business but haven't quite yet made it to that sustainable profitability, or something that might even be valuable to you as a seasoned entrepreneur where you're currently in the process of attempting to maintain your current level of success while at the same time adapting to the changing business landscape and wanting to grow and scale your business. And I figured, what's the best way for me to do that than to share some of the things that I've learned along the way that don't work. In fact, there are a lot of coaches, consultants, and business mentors, including myself at times, where we can get focused on, hey, here are the things that work. These are the things you should be doing. These are the things that you should try. And I don't think there's enough talk about the mistakes that are made. Now, personally, I was going to call this session the top business regrets that I have, except for the fact that I don't believe in the concept of regret, especially when it comes to the decisions that I've made in my business. I do believe in mistakes. I do believe in doing things the hard way when I didn't have to. I do believe in that there are a lot of things that if I could go back knowing everything that I know now, I would do a whole lot different, and I might call those mistakes. But I don't regret them because those are the things that, even though I learned the hard way, hopefully they're the things that I'm not as likely to have as a mistake maybe a third or fourth time or fifth time. Anyway, I just want to say hello to anyone who is watching live. If you are interested in commenting and or asking me any questions during this, I will not only share with you what I've prepared in advance, but I'm more than delighted to engage with you. What I'm going to do is just simply ask that you post it in the comments. We're actually broadcasting live to LinkedIn. Excuse me, I need to take a drink of water real quick. That might be better. Anyway, we are broadcasting live. I'm looking here. Yep, we're broadcasting live on LinkedIn right now. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can leave a comment right there on the live stream. It will pop up here in my box. If you are on YouTube, again, the live commenting system will work. You can type in your question or comment there. And then also on the Facebook account, you can comment as well. I do believe I'm also broadcasting this to Twitter. There's no way for you to do that. So if you want to interact with me live on Twitter, and you're watching on Twitter right now, head over to youtube.com/Cliff Ravenscraft, and you will be able to engage with me live. And by the way, hello to Lake. I see that you're there, and it's good to have you here. All right, moving right along. Let me go ahead and begin to share with you some of the mistakes that I've made, and I have these put down. By the way, let me tell you this. This is brought to you by the Building an Online Business Workshop. This is a full-day online experience coming up on Monday, June 26th. It's an all-day experience. There'll be several different sessions throughout the day, plenty of time in between the sessions for you to go and get your exercise in, get some fresh air, have some meal breaks, bathroom breaks, all of that good stuff. But it's going to be all day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'll explain a little bit more about the Building an Online Business Workshop as we go through. If you want to register now, you can do so. It's I think it's right there, nextlevelworkshop.info, not .com, but .info. The first mistake that I want to tell you about that I made when starting my online business. Now, in fairness to me, when I started my online business, I actually wasn't looking to start an online business. So I kind of went around things in a completely backwards way. But when I think about it, as it comes to generating a sustainable, responsible, profitable online business, doing what I did would be considered a mistake. And that is starting by creating content and building an audience. And this is what most people do. At least that's been my experience, especially as the podcast answer man. I successfully trained more than 40,000 people in the world how to launch a podcast. And I found over time that a majority of these people wanted to actually do what I did. And they had heard my story a great deal. And they said, Cliff, I want to do what you did. I want to get out there, create content about something that I'm passionate about, go ahead and attract an audience, and then eventually find some way to monetize that. Maybe one day I'll be able to leave my day job. And most people failed to do just that. And for the main reason of the fact that they actually started by creating content and building an audience just like I did. But anybody who knows my full story, and I've been very open about sharing it, my story of online business has not been easy. It has been quite challenging in those first years. So I started podcasting as a hobby in 2005. My wife and I began creating content around entertainment podcasts. We grew an audience between about 5 different shows of over 100,000 subscribers, maybe even 200,000 subscribers. I haven't done all of the math, because there's some overlap in between them. But anyway, over 100,000 subscribers. And as a result of that, we were starting to get feedback with emails saying, oh my gosh, I love what you guys said. I love that story that you shared. I love just how relatable everything you shared is. It's the first time I've ever experienced anybody talking out loud about these things that have been going on in my head. I thought I was the only person who dealt with this. Can I ask you a question? And as a result of getting all of this feedback, I'm like, man, I really enjoy this. I love this interaction. I love being of service. I love the fact that I'm entertaining people. But more than that, I love the fact that people are being educated, encouraged, inspired, and motivated to take their lives to the next level, to pursue their dreams, to live the lives for which they were created. This is my whole purpose in the world. And it's like, this is tapping into it. Eventually, over time, I began to ask myself, I wonder what life would be like if I could do this for a living instead of selling insurance. At the time, I was working in my mom and dad's family insurance agency. I was next in line to take it over. My grandfather started the business in 1937. And then when my dad retired, which, by the way, he has since retired, I would take over the agency. I'd make over $1 million in personal income. So that's what I was thinking about leaving behind, and thinking about, wonder what life would be like if I could go do this for a living instead. I had everybody telling me, Cliff, with the audience that you have, there's no way you shouldn't be making money. And so I began to implement some things and some techniques and strategies. And sure enough, because we had such a sizable audience, I was able to attract some advertisers, a couple of sponsors. We created a donation platform. We created a premium podcast subscription, lots of different streams of income coming in, but barely enough to really consider leaving my day job. Then all of a sudden I started having people ask me, hey, Cliff, can you teach me how to podcast? How do you do all this podcasting stuff? And I was doing that for free at first. And people said, Cliff, you've got to let me pay you. You just spent the last several hours. You have no idea how valuable this is to me. And I'm like, okay, how much should I charge? And then I started charging that rate, and people are like, Cliff, you've got to double these rates. And so I doubled my rates. And then all of a sudden people were saying, Cliff, you've got to double your rates. You're not charging enough. And so I doubled my rates. Not immediately. Trust me, I had to overcome all of the fear and all of the anxiety about pricing, and I'm not worthy of that. That's way too much. That's so uncomfortable. I had to deal with all the mental baggage. But even still, I got to the place where all of a sudden I'm making $3,000 to $5,000 a month every month, just doing all of this stuff on the side outside of my day job. So I began asking myself, what would it take for me to leave the day job? What if I were to put all of my most productive hours, Monday through Friday, instead of insurance, into this? Could we make it? My wife finally convinced me, Cliff, you've got to go in and tell your dad you're leaving the office. I need my husband back. The kids needs their dad back. I've So I totally know for a fact this is what we are meant to do, because we were very much creating all of this content together at the time. I was doing the podcast consulting on my own, but she's like, it's clear that God's opened this door for us. Let's step through. Let's boldly go where, as far as we're concerned, people like us have never gone before. Leaving a lifetime of employee behind and pursuing my own online business in a field that at the time people were saying that podcasting was dead. Go figure. Anyway, so I put my 90-day notice in, and during my first year of business, full-time self-employed, sure, I was making $3,000 to $5,000 a month, sometimes bumping up to as much as $5,000 a month, but that's business revenue when you consider the business has to pay health insurance for a family of 5. You consider the fact that I'm the sole income earner for my family. You consider there's the overhead of hiring a CPA to handle all these business taxes that I know nothing about, all of these professional fees that and all of this other stuff, and hiring people to help me figure out some of the ins and outs of things that I don't know, software subscriptions, just computers and all this other stuff. When it was all said and done, during the first 9 months, the business was generating revenue month after month after month. But there was one guy who was not getting paid. This guy right here. And then and by the way, I was working 7 days a week, every week for 9 months without a single day off in 2008, my first year in business. Finally, I took 1 day a week off every week on Sunday, and I just decided that I would increase the number of hours the other 6 days a week. Finally, during those final 3 months, I started to bring home a paycheck. But when it was all said and done, after taxes, my net income, my net personal income from my first year of full-time self-employment was only $11,000. And that's with an audience of over 100,000 people. You want to know what? It wasn't the right audience for a business. It wasn't the right focus. It wasn't the right content for the right audience with the right things. And so starting with content, while yes, I had an incredibly loyal audience. I had people who were eager to hear us. We were making a powerful, positive, and profound impact in people's lives, but not in a way that had a business model that would support myself and my family financially to be able to contribute and invest all of this time, effort, and energy. So one of the biggest mistakes I made in starting my online business was the fact that I didn't start out with the idea of building a business. Instead, I just started creating content, building an audience, and just see where it goes. All right, I'm checking in here real quickly. I do see we have some live viewers, and I see I got one person with a thumbs up like on Facebook. Thank you for that. And I am not seeing any comments yet. So if, other than Lake, who has already said hello, if you want to chat and say hello, you want to ask me a question, if you want to give me a comment, if anything you want, type it into the comment section and I will respond here live. And I'm just now looking and I noticed that I did not start my timer at the beginning of this. So I'm going to have to try to keep an eye on time. Actually, let me set it. Let's see. This is supposed to go from 1:30 to 2:15. Set an alarm for 2:05. Done. All right. So that'll give me a 10-minute kind of wrap-up window. All right, moving along. Let's take a look at another mistake that I made. Not designing my desired lifestyle. Oh, by the way, we got a question here. So let's see what this says. So if you don't start with content, what do you start with? Jason, thank you so much for that question. I'm so glad you asked. We're going to get into that right here, right now. In fact, real quickly, it's what my entire Building an Online Business workshop is all about. I go through an 11-step formula, but you're going to get a good deal of insight right here in this live stream. I want to make sure this isn't just a sales pitch. Not that there's anything wrong with something that's just a sales pitch, but this is more than just a sales pitch. There's a lot of education. So if you're not going to start with content and building an audience, Where should you start? Well, my next several mistakes will indicate that. And I love the fact that you asked that question. It was perfectly timed. So, the first thing that I would have done if I could go back and do it all over again, I would start by designing my desired lifestyle. Having a picture in my mind of like how many hours a week would I like to work? Actually, is this not on another slide? Let's see here. Yeah. So, yeah, first of all, let me talk about lifestyle. So, one of the things that I know that if I was to do it all over again, I would ask myself, do I want to work 7 days a week, every week, for 9 months without a single day off? That's the first question I would ask myself. No. Okay. So, I would ask myself, how many days a week do I want to work? How many hours per day do I want to work? How much income do I want to generate on a monthly basis? Most people never ask these questions. They're like, hey, let me create some content. Let me go build an audience. We'll see what happens. Maybe I can learn about something that I could offer them. And then we'll see if I can come up with a product or service. We'll figure out how much money they'd be willing to pay. And depending on how many people buy it, we'll see how much money I can earn. And maybe one day I might be able to leave my soul-sucking day job. That is not ever a reasonable path to gaining the success of building a profitable and sustainable and responsible online business. It is the path that I chose. But again, I didn't start this thing out with the idea of having a business that would cause me to leave my day job. When I started podcasting as a hobby, I had no desire to leave my day job. In fact, I thought my day job as an insurance agent was my single greatest ministry in the world until I realized there was a bigger opportunity. Now, I'm thankful for the large audience that I had, but quite frankly, if it comes to a business income generating venture, the fact that I had a very large audience that was not the right audience for the right business model to give me the lifestyle that I desired, which I didn't even have any clue what lifestyle I wanted, I was perfectly fine working around the clock every single day of the week because I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I had a lot of beliefs that says the harder you work, the more you should earn. So therefore, for me to earn income, then I must work hard. And so for me, that I had this belief that supported that, wow, I'm working around the clock. I must be adding lots of value. I must be really worthy of the income that I'm generating because of how hard I'm working and how many hours I put into this thing, how challenging and difficult. But I didn't even have the idea to ask, what do I want my life to be like? Now, on the opposite end of that, it is interesting when I work with somebody as a business mentor and coach, and they say, okay, Cliff, here's the situation. I have this day job that I want to leave. I want to create an online business, and I don't have an audience. I've never created any content. I don't have any of this stuff, and I'm really looking to try to figure out what could I do? What are the options available for me? By the way, I want to be able to leave my day job within 3 to 6 months, and I need $25,000 a month every single month. Well, first and foremost, that is a very good thing that you have that much clarity. It's not so great that you don't have the answers to any clue about what you want. You don't have your focus is more running away from something than it is running towards something that you feel called to. At least that's one thing I did have going for me, is I knew exactly what I wanted to create as far as for myself and what I wanted my life to be. And that is being of service to others, having conversations with them that was having a profound positive impact in people's lives, that was literally changing the way people perceived who they were, why they're here, and what they want to create, and absolutely going after the life for which they were created. That has always been my driving force. And I'm like, listen, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I will find a way. Well, if I would have asked some more valuable questions in the early stages, I would have gotten there. So think about what is your lifestyle? How many hours a week do you want to put into this thing? What is the income you need? And these things can start helping you fill in some of the other pieces in the puzzle. I promise you that if you have no audience right now and you've got 3 to 6 months before you want to take flight and take golf and have liftoff before the end of the runway, if you want to do that within 3 to 6 months and you have no audience, I promise you that creating a $49 a month or $39 a month or $29 a month membership program is probably not the right thing for you. Unless you have some crazy, insane access to some resources to build thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in your community in those first 3 months, and getting people on board and figuring out all of the mindset issues that you're going to go through going from employee to business owner, and figuring out the churn and all the technology and everything else behind it. I'm not saying it's not possible, but sometimes if you just get a clear picture of what do I want my lifestyle to be, then you can actually build a business that actually supports that lifestyle, rather than creating a business and then trying to find some way to create a lifestyle around that business. That, unfortunately, was one of my biggest mistakes. All right, I've got another one, but we do have a question that's come in here. It says, John, can you speak to the legal protection in aspect for content as well as releases by online guests, music, graphics, etc.? So, John, thank you for the question. I am not a lawyer, and I've never really been legally minded in that area. What I can tell you is that you could go to any place that has like specialist in content law. These people can indicate to you what your liability is and how to get protection for that. You can get business insurance that protects you from saying certain things, and liability, what is called being liable, and all of those other things. You would want to actually seek legal and professional advice for those specific things. Now, when it comes to legal things like that, like I said, I'm not a legally minded person. I do refer you to the legal experts in that area, but I can tell you that I have been a guest on more than at least 1,000 different podcasts. And I think I have been asked to sign 2 or 3, what do you call it, guest release forms. Can you click this, sign this? And of the 2 or 3, let's just say there were 3, I probably denied 2 of them. It's like, why is this even a thing? And there was one that the opportunity for me to be the guest was absolutely like a dream come true, and it was just something that they required, and I read through it, and I didn't understand everything. I didn't want to, it was early stages of my business, so I didn't even go through and read it. The whole thing is that they're like, listen, anything you say, we can make money off of. We can put it into products or services and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, whatever, this is great. The opportunity to be a guest on this person's show is let me just sign it. The other 2 people were, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't like the biggest needle mover, if you will. And as a result of that, I chose, like, listen, I don't need a legal agreement. If you need a legal documentation for me to be a guest on your show, I'm just going to pass on this opportunity. That's just my own thing. Now, 997 other people, I show up as a guest. There has never been anything legally binding about my showing up on their show. Now, do I suggest that you not have that? Absolutely not. I don't play an attorney on television. I'm not playing one on the internet. I claim no legal professional advice whatsoever. Go seek the advice of an attorney. I can tell you also, I have had probably a couple hundred people. Let's see here. StreamYard has lost access to your LinkedIn account. Don't worry. We've got you covered. Click here to restore your destination. So let me see if I can take care of that. And if I can, real quickly, I will. I apologize for the disruption here. All right. It says beautiful. It's on the go. So hopefully I'm still on LinkedIn. Here, what was I saying? So there are a number of people out there who do go and create these legal forms and all this other stuff. There are templates out there. You can do, how do I get a guest release form? And you could require all of this stuff. Oh, I know where I was at right before that notification came up, is that I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people as guests on my podcasts. Never have I asked anybody to sign anything. I've had people who have co-hosted shows with me for years, and there was only verbal agreements about what that relationship was like. Now, again, you're just talking to somebody right now who's not a legally minded person. Now, as a result of that, have I had some verbal agreements with people over the years, and I've been burned by not having something in writing? Technically speaking, the answer to that question is yes. It's only happened a handful of times, but when it has happened, if I had a written contract, a written agreement, would I have pursued my rights legally based upon what was legally agreed upon? The answer to that question is no. So even if I had it, I wouldn't have used it. But I don't discount the value of your question. I don't discount the value of having legal agreements and consent forms and releases and all of those things. Chances are, if you go down that route and you get those things, just seek that advice from a professional legal advice giver, not myself, in this area. All right, John, thank you so much for your question. Keep those questions coming. Let's see here. Jason said, when he says, I swear I'm not a plant. I love that. All right, keep the questions coming, the comments coming. I do appreciate them. We're going to move on to my next mistake. Not having a clear picture of my destination. Now, this is a continuation of what I was talking about before. How much income will I generate, and how many hours will I work? Now, since I've already covered that, I'm just going to move on, and let's see what the next one is here. This is huge. This is the biggest deal right here. I want you to hear this. Not identifying people with money who have a problem that they are willing to pay to have solved, that I can and want to solve. All right. Now, a lot of people out there have said, you know what? I want to serve fill in the blank audience. Not even thinking for a second whether or not that audience would be willing, or if that audience has money. So, for example, there are times when it's like, you know what I want to do? I want to serve people who are in hundreds of thousands of dollars of credit card debt, and they're in danger of losing everything. Now, can you build a business model around that? I think it is possible. However, are you going to sell the standard products and services to that individual that are available to you? I think you'll be a little bit more limited in what you can offer to those individuals because they have no money to spend. They're already massively in debt. They're overwhelmed and burdened. Now, I do have some people that I've worked with over the years that actually have succeeded really well in building a multi-million-dollar income. And I'm talking about more than nearly $2 million a year of income from serving audiences like this. However, it's one stream of income. It's advertisers. It's people who want to reach those people. There are people out there who do debt consolidations. There are people out there that do debt, all of these things. These people who are really serious about trying to pay off that debt, they buy these products or services that actually help them manage all of this different stuff if they're working towards it. And so credit card offers, it's like, how do you, anyway, I'm not questioning anybody who, what products and services they advertise, but there are a lot of people who's like, hey, here's a low interest, blah, 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 this or something that you can sign up for. And these people will pay lots of money, or at least have in the past. But if all of a sudden things change in the world and the economy, and all of a sudden those advertisers go away, or a lot of the growth in that audience and coming in, it's kind of like one and done. It's not a loyal community that you've built that continues to follow you. if a majority of that traffic that generated that 1.8, 1.9, almost $2 million a year of revenue, if something changes with Google's algorithm and now all of a sudden only 1/3 of the audience is there, guess what happens to the revenue? It also drops by that much. So it's very important, I believe, at least that you identify someone with money who has a problem. So first and foremost, find people who have money. That would be a great place to start. Another one is find those people who have money that they also have a problem. There's a lot of people out there who says, I really want to serve this person. And then they're like, well, you know, what product or service can I give them? Well, you've got to find a problem that they have. Does that audience have a problem? And then they're like, yes, they have a problem. This is the problem. Great. Question for you. Are they willing to pay to have that problem go away? Or do they recognize the problem, kind of perceive a little bit of discomfort from the problem, but quite frankly, they've managed. It's not that big of a deal. You know what? If somebody was to offer me, for $10 they'll solve this problem for me, fine. Yeah, I'll pay $10. But if you're looking at a higher price product or service, am I going to pay that much to have this problem go away? You want to know, is this thing going to be something that can be validated, that I will be able to earn the amount of money that in the first step, I want to make this amount of money every month doing this kind of work with these products and services at these prices, only working this much amount of time. If the formula doesn't work out, then chances are you haven't identified the right people who have money, who have a problem that they're willing to pay that kind of price to have solved. Do you see how every single piece of this statement is vital for you to understand? So now, there are people out there who have found audiences, they have found an ideal client, people who have money, who have a problem, and yes, they are definitely willing to pay to have it solved. But the question now becomes, is it something that you can solve? And it becomes a real tragedy when the answer to that question is yes, but only after you get into solving that problem. You invest days, weeks, months, years, and maybe even a decade or more solving that problem, only to discover that it's not a problem you want to solve, or getting so hung up in that one thing that you're like, okay, I'm over this. I'm burned out on this. So you not only want people with money who have a problem that they're willing to pay to have solved, you want something that you not only can solve, but you truly have something inside of you that says, this is something that if I were to get paid by these people to solve this problem, this is what I truly want to do. So if you could find the keys to all of that, this was not something right here, was not something that I had when I started my business. All right. Again, I'm going to just check in. If there's anybody who has any questions or comments, feel free to add them. If you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, they'll come right into me here and I'll feature them in the live stream. I'm going to take a drink of water. I want to let you know that this live broadcast is brought to you by my Building an Online Business Workshop. It is an online workshop this time, coming up on Monday, June 26th. It's an all-day affair. You can learn more and register right now at nextlevelworkshop.info. That's .info. All right. The next mistake that I will cover here is not creating a mailing list from day one. Hear me out. I started my very first podcast in December 2005. By December 2006, I had determined I wanted to launch my Podcast Answer Man brand. I saw this as a significant potential stream of income teaching people how to podcast. By this time, I had already reached hundreds of thousands of people through other entertainment-based podcasts. But I had just started to build this brand of the Podcast Answer Man. I may not know all the answers related to podcasting, but I can promise you this. Any question you can ask, I will go find the answer. And this was something that I knew people with money had a problem. They wanted to have a podcast. They were willing to pay to have that solved. And it was something that I could do. And at the time, it was something I wanted to do. So this is great. By the way, do you hear that it took me a year before I figured that out? So now I began this, and if you want to call it a regret, if there's anything that even comes to a regret, that I didn't start collecting email addresses from day one. So again, December 2006. Then we get to December 2007, just 1 month before I become full-time self-employed. Now I've had this brand for 1 year. At this point, I've reached tens of thousands of people with my Podcast Answer Man brand. Guess how many people during that year, out of the tens of thousands of people that I have reached, guess how many of them were on my mailing list? After 1 year, 0. Why? Because I didn't have a mailing list. All right. Now, fast forward to the next month, January 2008. I am now full-time self-employed. If you listen to the beginning of this stream, you heard me tell you the story of how much I worked during that first year. And at the end of that year, working around the clock, I was profitable. This was good, but only $11,000 net income. Now, I was reaching thousands and thousands and thousands of people, even more and more people than I reached the year prior to that. So at the end of 2008, my second year of my brand as Podcast Answer Man, how many people by the end of that second year do you think signed up for my email list? If you answered 0, it's because you're right, and it's because I never had an email list. Certainly, Cliff's got this all figured out by 2009, right? Nope. Here I am, my second year of full-time business, my third year in the brand of Podcast Answer Man. At the end of that year, I've now reached tens and I'm probably close to 60, 70,000 people that I've reached with my Podcast Answer Man brand at this point. And it's about ready to hockey stick. But at the end of 2009, my end of the second year of full-time self-employment, third year as the brand, if you guessed how many people was on my mailing list by the end of that year of 2009, if you answered 0, you'd be right, because I still did not have a mailing list. There's a huge reason for this, because I wasn't surrounding myself with people who said, "Hey, Cliff, you should have a mailing list." We'll get into that a little bit later. But eventually, in 2010, I began upgrading my peer group. I began reading and researching and learning about things that I should do to maybe see a little bit more success in my business pursuits, growing personally and professionally. And when I heard about the power of mailing lists, I heard about it many, many, many times. Maybe you have as well, and you still haven't started that mailing list yet. Or maybe you have a mailing list and you haven't done anything with it yet. Maybe this will be the time that you'll wake up. I hope. Anyway, it wasn't until October 2010 until I launched my very first mailing list. October 2010. Now, I'm going to keep going on mailing lists for just a second, and I'm going to tell you that my next mistake that I made is not having an incredibly powerful email opt-in. Now, I do have one today, and you can find it right now at mindsetanswerman.com/free. In fact, do you remember at the beginning of the stream when I told you I worked around the clock, just nonstop, only made $11,000 net income that first year? How is that possible? Well, it's because all beliefs have consequences. See, I had been living my life up until January 2008 as an employee, and I had an employee mindset. I also had a mindset about money, that money's the root of all evil. I had a mindset that said that you have to work hard to earn money, and if what you're doing is easy, you haven't earned your money. The more difficult something is, the more hours you put in. If it's like all of this stuff. And there's this one story that I tell in this opening keynote address called All Beliefs Have Consequences, where I had a client who signed up to pay me $300 for a 1-hour consulting session, and we solved his problem in only, I think it was 90 seconds or something like that. And it was before the call was even scheduled to start. He was completely satisfied. And then right after that, he's like, okay, Cliff, send me the invoice. This is awesome. Man, I can't thank you enough. But there is a little bit more to the story, and I refused to send him the invoice. He begged me multiple times, please send me the invoice. I refused to let him pay me $300 because in my mind, I had not earned it. And this was happening all year long throughout 2008. All beliefs have consequences. If you go to mindsetanswerman.com, you will see my opening keynote address to the Free the Dream conference. This is a talk that I've been paid thousands of dollars to deliver at other people's conferences. It is the one talk that has the possibility to profoundly change the way you think about life and how you perceive the world, and will take you and help you learn how to discover what limiting beliefs are holding you back, how to discover them, how to eliminate them, how to replace them with empowering beliefs, and how to condition them so that you actually get different results in life. All of this is available for free right now at mindsetanswerman.com/free. Now, when I'm a guest on somebody's podcast and they say, hey, how can people connect with you after they, finish this, listening to this episode, I give them a variation of that. And as a result of that, people are signing up for my mailing list left and right. I was just on the Graham Cochran show just recently. 300 people within 1 week of the release of his podcast episode signed up for my mailing list just because of that email opt-in. Do you have an irresistible free gift that you give away that says, if you sign up here, I will give you this thing? And also, I will stay in contact with you with additional valuable insight through my messages that I put out on my email newsletter. So I did not have this. That's another major mistake. So I had it from October. Actually, for probably the first 6 months, I didn't have any quote unquote email opt-in. It wasn't. Matter of fact, I think the real first email opt-in was the Free the Dream thing. So it was several years later. Sometimes these mistakes, you learn the really hard way. I'm just checking to see if there's more comments coming in. Let me just check in real quick on this one. It says, that sounds like the services who help people who are in debt to the IRS. If they can't pay their taxes, how do they pay you? Right. Jason, absolutely. There is certainly a lot of that stuff out there. I just encourage people, definitely find out an audience out there that has money. You'll definitely be able to scale your business. I encourage you to consider an audience of people who aren't one and done, but people who, once they find you and discover you, that the more you learn about them, if you're able to and you desire to solve one problem, maybe they've got other problems that you can also serve, and they'll be repeat customers. Jason also says that was a while back. Absolutely. Yeah, I get it. And for some reason, some of these things are not popping up as they come in. Actually, I think they are, but I had my mouse over top of it here. So if anybody wants to comment, do so in the comments box on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Okay, so let me just tell you about my email opt-in. Before I had my email opt-in, which is incredibly powerful, has changed everything. By the way, it's still on my to-do list today to create even more email opt-ins. Like I could see myself having, like Amy Porterfield does, which is having an incredible podcast episode, coming up with some sort of checklist for that specific topic, and say, if you want this, sign up over here, and then create a landing page. Go to suchandsuch.com/ and then a number for the episode number, and then they can put their email address in and get that specific opt-in. Now, people who are already on the mailing list, if they put their name and email address in there, it's not going to add them a second time, depending on what mailing service provider you have. But they will get that additional thing. And also, you'll now know that they have that plus the other things. So over time, when you look at an email subscriber, you'll see all the things that they're most interested in. Kind of nice to know. The other thing is that there's a lot of people listening to your podcast that are just waiting for you to offer the one thing that appeals to them before they finally join your mailing list. Now, even though I didn't have an email opt-in, I did actually have an opt-in form. I'm sorry, an incentive, I should say. I had an opt-in form in October 2010. And that's basically said this: if you would like to be notified if the next time I have a product or service to sell or to offer you, or a discount on existing products or services, please enter your name and email address into the box below. Surprisingly, in the first 2 months of doing this, I had 200 people that said, "Sir Cliff, sell me something." It's like, awesome. But for 2 months, did I send a single email to them? No, not at all. But eventually, in January of 2011, I created my Podcast Answer Man Bootcamp webinar series. I had taught 4 people in one day, 2 hours each, how to use Adobe Audition. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did the same thing 4 different times, 2 hours. That's 8 hours of teaching people how to do exactly the same thing. What if I were to just do this once, record it, and let people watch it? Boom. I'm like, okay, let's create a digital course. So I told people, hey, if you hire me, it might be $300 for you to hire me for these 2 hours. I'm assuming my rates were $150 an hour at the time. So it'd be $300 for me to teach you how to do this. However, I'm getting ready to host a boot camp webinar series where I'm going to do 7 boot camps or 7 webinars that are 2 hours each. And I will take the top 7 topics that I'm hired to teach people. One is Adobe Audition, one is Audacity, one is GarageBand, WordPress for podcasters, products and services, how to monetize your podcast. I had all of these things, and there were 7 different things. I said it's $100 per webinar if you want to join. So basically, you get it for a third of the price. Plus, you get to watch. It'll be available as a course afterwards. You'll have access to watch it over and over again, not just during our session together. So if you want, you can buy or sign up and pay to attend any of these for $100 individually. Or if you buy all 5 or 7 of them, you can get it for $595. This was my first email ever written to my email list, and it went out to only 200 people, and I made $16,000 with that first email. To say that I was sold on the power of a mailing list? Yeah. All right. Another mistake that I made in my business is not sending only email broadcasts and not using email sequences. Now, email broadcast is where you send an email, and it is whatever you formulate, you send it out to everybody who is currently on your mailing list, one and done. Whereas, let's just say it's a week before Graham Cochran has my podcast interview. So if I write an email newsletter update, it's like, oh man, this is something I think would be really valuable to all the people on my mailing list. And then I would sometimes spend or invest 3, 4, 5 hours crafting that email. It's like, wow, that is really good. And let's just say you have 2,000 people on your mailing list and you hit send on that broadcast. Those 2,000 people are like, wow, that's amazing, right? Then let's just say 3 days later, the Graham Cochran Show episode is released, and now 300 new people just signed up for your email list. Those 300 people will never read that email because they weren't on your list when you sent it as a broadcast. So if you were instead to create an email newsletter sequence, you could actually put everybody who signs up into your mailing list into a sequence so that it'll automatically deliver, and I have it scheduled, 1 email update per week, every week on Monday morning. That's the way I have mine set up. It's my email newsletter. And if I'm going to invest 3 or 4 or 5 hours, I put it in the sequence, And anybody who's already been on my email list and they're up to date with things, boom, next Monday, if I put a new email in today, that is actually going to go out on Monday for all the people who are currently up to date. But let's just say there are 30 other emails in my sequence, and I write this new 31st email. Well, the 31st email in my newsletter sequence will go out this Monday to everybody who's up to date in the sequence. But the 300 people who just signed up because they listened to the Graham Cochran show, they will actually get this email that I just wrote 31 weeks from now. Do you get it? So you want to make sure if you're using sequences, which I do highly recommend that you do, that you're creating evergreen content that's not time sensitive. And if you have time sensitive information, there are 2 techniques that you could do. And I will tell you about those in the Building an Online Business Workshop. And there's other email newsletter tips and strategies that I would love to tell you about. Head over to nextlevelworkshop.info, not .com, nextlevelworkshop.info. Register today. It's coming up Monday, June 26th, all day long. Can't wait to see you there. Another mistake that I made. Let me see. Is there any other questions that have come in? Nope. Okay. Looking for any comments, any questions. If you have them, post them here. And we're well over the time. And I'm going to continue to go, and we'll wrap this up pretty quickly. Not investing in my personal growth and professional growth sooner. One of the mistakes that I made early on was thinking there's no way I can afford to go to these conferences. There's no way that I can afford to hire a coach. There's no way that I can afford to pay to participate in a mastermind group. There's no way that I can afford this. And looking back, what I would say today is there's no way that I could afford not to do this. Just one insight could radically change the way that I see things. In fact, the very first time I went to a conference where other entrepreneurs were, somebody said, "Hey, Cliff, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing this. How's that going for you?" I'm like, "Well, things are okay. This is my biggest struggle right now." "Oh, really? Have you ever thought about doing this?" And I'm like, "No, I've never thought about that. How would I do that?" And they said, "Well, you could do this, this, and this. There's also this, this, this. If you'd like, I can shoot you an email and the service that I use, and I can even give you an example of what I did." I'm like, "Oh, amazing." And I come home from that conference, and they gave me access. And it's like, this is mind-blowing. And next thing you know, within 30 days, I've more than 5x'd what I invested to go to that conference. This has happened time and time and time again. And so if I made a mistake, is not investing in my professional growth. Help surround yourself with people who have already done what it is that you want to do, and just get further faster. Not upgrading my peer group. So there's one thing to go out and see some people occasionally, maybe once a year at a conference, but it's a whole other thing to radically change the people that you do life with the most. Jim Rohn says you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Tony Robbins says that the quality of your life will be determined by the expectations of your peer group. And I got to say that when I started my business, one of the things that I did do right was create a peer group that would support me. But it wasn't like-minded people. They were mostly employees who had never owned a business. So they had no insightful advice to give me. Sure, they were encouraging me, some of them, but as soon as some of them started to see me experience struggles, they're like, "Okay, I can't support you anymore." Actually, just one person. "I can't support you anymore. You need to go back and get your job back at the insurance office, blah, blah, blah. I think this is very irresponsible." Thankfully, all those other people, they said, "You need to kick that guy out of this peer group." And I did, and they encouraged me, but still I didn't have the insightful advice. I was like, "Here's some suggestions you might want to try. This is something that I've done that works." When I started a mastermind group with, I'm trying to say Pat Flynn and peer group at the same time. When I started a peer group upgrading process with Pat Flynn, we started a mastermind group in October 2010 called what is today called the Green Room Mastermind. We have been meeting every week since October 2010. That group currently has 6 people in it, and the 6 of us have been in this group together for more than a decade. So that's Pat Flynn, myself. Then we brought in Michael Stelzner, Leslie Samuel, Mark Mason, and Ray Edwards. And I got to tell you, my life has never been the same. I can trace millions of dollars in revenue to the feedback, the advice, the challenging, the everything that I've gotten from upgrading my peer group. Everything changed overnight when I upgraded my peer group and started a mastermind group. All right. Finally, overly concerned about how I would be perceived by others. This was a lot for me because I had a lot of emotional baggage of wondering, am I worthy of this? What if I fail? What would people say? What if people disagree with me? I was emotionally fragile at the time. And so one of my biggest mistakes was being overly concerned about how I would be perceived by others. The other one is taking negative feedback way too personally. All right. And also, another mistake, losing sight of all the positive feedback and the success stories. One of my favorite things that I eventually did was create this box right here. Inside of here, there are hundreds of postcards, thank you cards, handwritten letters, typed up letters, all of it sent in the physical mail to me. There are 3 letters of people who had said, Cliff, because of something you said in a podcast, because of something you shared in one of your products that I purchased, because of something you shared with me and said to me in a course that I signed up to go through with you, I made the decision not to commit suicide. In fact, actually, there's a 4th one, and I won't go into too many details, but let me just say, one of the mistakes is focusing too much on the negative stuff that people say, which is very few and far between, and discounting, or not necessarily discounting, but just losing sight of the difference that you're making in people's lives. By the way, building an online business workshop is something that I have a lot of experience doing. In fact, I want to share with you, you know what, I'm just going to keep going instead of all of these other things. I want to share with you this right here. In fact, let me do it this way. This right here is a picture of the very first ever building an online business workshop. What you are seeing right there is my studio. That's what you're looking at right there. That's behind the camera that I'm currently speaking into. I built this home. It's called the house that podcasting built, so that I could teach workshops live in this space. Here is a group photo of one of the sessions of building an online business workshop. Here's another group photo for building an online business workshop. These are different groups. This is another session of building an online business workshop, and there have been others as well. By the way, this session right here, people from 3 different countries traveling to Northern Kentucky here in the Next Level studio to be a part of this workshop. In fact, let me share this one testimonial with you if I can read it. It says, I am happy to share that my participation in the Next Level workshop resulted in $5,000 monthly new revenue within 2 weeks of attending the workshop. Prior to this workshop, I had 0 revenue. I just had to focus. But I have to tell you, that's not the whole story. Taking the workshop was truly life-changing for me, and I continue to be inspired. Inspired and fired up both professionally and personally. This is Ann Sharpstein. What has taken place through this workshop is absolutely incredible. There's more testimonials over at nextlevelworkshop.info, not .com, nextlevelworkshop.info. And here's the situation. You don't have to travel to Northern Kentucky for this session on Monday, June 26, 2023. It is going to be, for the very first time, available online. And it's currently half of the price of what I charged for the in-person version of this event. If you would like to take your business efforts to a whole new level of success, if you'd like to avoid all of the mistakes that I've made and what I've seen thousands of other people have made, through their online business entrepreneurial journeys. If you'd like some step-by-step strategies, an 11-step formula for exactly what order you should take to create a profitable, responsible, sustainable online business that supports the lifestyle you want to live, then I encourage you to come to this workshop. If you'd like marketing strategies for your email list and the tools and tips on how to do it effectively, if you'd like to be able to create a value proposition statement and learn who am I, why am I here, what value do I bring to the table, there's an entire workshop and an exercise where you'll sit down and create what's called your inventory of value. And then after that, we will do your value proposition statement so that when somebody asks you, hey, what do you do for a living? When you answer that question in one sentence, actually it's one long sentence. In one sentence, you'll be able to answer the question, what do you do? And somebody will instantly either say one of two things. How do I work with you? Or, oh my gosh, I know somebody that I want to connect with you. They need to work with you. That is another workshop experience that you'll have. You'll learn about what it takes to succeed in business as far as mindset and characteristics. You'll learn how to attract your exact ideal customer, which is much better than growing an audience. Anyway, I can't wait for this opportunity to work with you. Head over to nextlevelworkshop.info. Nextlevelworkshop.info. I hope to see you there. And until next time, let me click over here, and I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.